Well, first and foremost, I guess we can do some introductions because it is 10:01. So let's go ahead and get started. First and foremost, my name is Colleen Delange. I am a trainer here at MiRealSource. A little bit about my background is the reason I teach this class is because I worked at a forms company called ZipLogics, which made ZipForm for several years. And I've also been a licensed realtor myself for over 22 years. So I think when it comes to forms, I know a thing or two. So I'm going to take you through some highlights. As an agent, I am all about the easy buttons and the quick action links. So we're going to talk about a lot about that today. I'm going to basically show you how you can write contracts from A to Z. We're going to cover two things. We're going to cover how you can create a listing and pull it in from the tax records, click a button, and basically send all that great listing information over to the MLS to create your listing. We're also going to talk about how you can fill out purchase contracts by clicking an easy button and importing 90% of what you need directly from the MLS. So we're going to cover all of that today, and we're going to cover some of the new changes in Authentisign 2.0. So with that, I want to probably start off with the new changes, just so you know what to expect in the new 2.0, which was just released. And then if you do have any questions, just a little bit of housekeeping, if you have any questions along the, on anything that we cover today, whether you just need to see something again, or maybe you need a little further explanation, feel free to type it in the questions panel, which is probably minimized over at the right-hand side of your screen, kind of looks like an orange or red arrow. If you expand that, there will be a questions box, and you can type your question in at any time. I've also included some popular handouts that I wrote in the handout section. So if you open up the handout section and you click on it, you can actually download those quick, I call them like cheat sheets, but they're really just quick tips for that particular item. So, all right, with that, I'm going to turn my fuzzy hair off and I'm going to get into Authentisign. But like I said, we want to do this as interactive as possible, so please feel free to type in your questions as we get started here. So you may be wondering, okay, well, I keep hearing about the new Authentisign, so why did they change Authentisign, and am I going to see a lot of differences? The good news is the reason that they changed Authentisign and they went to Authentisign 2.0 is because it's 60% faster. There were many times where you'd be loading documents and you'd see that circle kind of spinning around, and it just wasn't as efficient as it could be. So the good news is now it's 60% faster, and one of the benefits is now instead of having to open and expand each section of the wizard, that wizard is always open on the right-hand side of your screen. So where you're seeing these little tabs, the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, those stay open now. You don't have to open and expand them. And you can really, if you follow some of the tips that I'm going to show you today, you really can send documents out for e-signatures, and it should take you less than a minute. So I'm going to show you some really great ways that you can speed up that whole process. Some of the other things that they enhanced in the new Authentisign is they're now using high resolution docs. So I know as an agent myself, sometimes I would pull documents in, especially if you're talking about offers and you're trying to counter them. I'm pulling those documents in, and sometimes they were a little fuzzy. They were kind of hard to counter because they were a little bit blurry. So the good news is now Authentisign is using high resolution docs. Another big benefit is you can also change the signer's name in real time. So let me explain. You could always go back and change a signer's name, but generally you had to stop the envelope, you had to then copy it, then you had to change the signer's name and resend it. The good news is you can change a signer's name now in real time. So if you spelled Joe Schmageggi's name wrong, you now can make that change, hit save, and when Joe Schmageggi opens up his contracts to sign, his name will appear corrected. So that's a huge improvement instead of having to restart the whole process for a simple mistake like that, in my opinion. Some of the other options are attorneys or that reviewer role can now provide feedback. So if they say, no, I don't want my client to sign this, before they had to reject it, we're going to kind of go through all of that. But before they had to actually reject the document, then you had to pick up the phone and you had to call the attorney and find out, why did you reject it? Why don't you want your client to sign it? They now can actually leave that right in a feedback box that says, why are you rejecting this signature? Maybe the name is spelled wrong, maybe the closing date is spelled wrong, but they can actually fill that out now instead of just rejecting. So there's also some additional tools that have been added to the new Authentisign. So some really good improvements. I've been beta testing this now for 5 months. And I'm really, really pleased with the changes. There was 1 or 2 things we asked them to change, and they've already accomplished that. So that made me very happy. The interface is much simpler. It's also a lot clearer, and clients, when they're signing, they also find, even on their tablet, on their phones, it's a much clearer interface on their end. And there was a couple other changes I'm going to cover on the client end that you can see too. The signing still works the same. You're simply dragging the tags into the place where you want them to be, but you can also set up defaults now. You can also set up custom layouts. So that has been enhanced. Now you could do that in the previous version, but I found it a little bit clunky, if you will. It's a lot easier to do in the new version. Clients also complained about in the previous version that sometimes the completion, if you were on a phone, sometimes the final complete button was a little bit askew and kind of hard to see. And sometimes if they had their phone blown up quite large, that button appeared just off the screen. So they didn't end up completing their signature. That's been resolved. So now whatever device they open up Authentisign on, that will actually... it will show that device, and it will show everything within the screen settings of that device. So it makes it a lot easier. All right, and then lastly, here's that feedback that I told you about. So if you have set up an attorney who's going to review the documents before their buyer signs it or before their seller signs it, they now can reject the document, but they can tell you why. So I don't have to wait for the attorney to call me back because I had to call him to figure out why he didn't like it. So the idea is it makes it much more streamlined and much more efficient. All right, so I'm kind of that girl who likes to do everything live. So we're going to actually take a look at TransactionDesk Live. We're going to take a look at Authentisign. For those of you who are brand new, let me explain what TransactionDesk is. TransactionDesk is just a way that you can fill out your contracts from anywhere, whether it's on your phone using the app or whether it's on your desktop. But the idea is your listing packages, your sales packages, all the forms you need are online so that you can create a transaction from anywhere. The Authentisign portion is simply the signing, how your clients are getting the documents and signing them. They can do that standing right next to you, or they can do it on vacation or a country away. The idea is, when in this market, we need to get those signatures as quick as possible and get these documents over to those listing agents. And now you can do that from the property that you're showing even. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with my good friend Tom Lipinski listed a beautiful house. All of my listings are unfortunately a little bit more fixer-uppers. They're not quite as exciting as his. So he gave me permission to use his listing today. But as you can see, Tom's listed this beautiful home in Grosse Pointe Farms right on the water for $3 million. I never ever see that price range. Must be nice. But the idea here is the hardest part, and if you remember this, I promise TransactionDesk and Instanet will be a breeze. The hardest part of this program is simply, where are you starting? Okay, so if you are on the buy side, you're always really starting from the MLS, because let's face it, if you're on the buy side, you have a buyer, you just went, you saw a property that's listed in the MLS, that information is already there. Now you want to click a button and you want to create all your purchase docs from what's actually there, right? However, on the listing side, I really don't want to trust that an agent put that information in correctly. I want to pull from the tax records. So that's really the hardest part of this whole program, is where do you start? So let's take a look. So if you are on the buy side, you are always starting within the MLS. So I'm just going to pick somebody from our our call today. So we are going to say for a moment that Tammy has gone in, she's shown this beautiful $3 million property, and Tammy's got a buyer and she's ready to write up the offer. Congratulations, Tammy. That's a nice sale to have. So Tammy now wants to take all this great information, like the disclosures, like who had it listed, like all the detail, the property, the school district, the property address, the ID, all of that can be imported into Tammy's contracts. So how do we do that? Well, that's kind of what these little action, we call them quick action icons, if you will. The idea is if Tammy's really writing an offer on this beautiful property, she's simply going to click this button because it's going to start auto-populating all of Tammy's purchase contracts. So let's actually do that. So we're going to click that blue splash looking button, which by the way is the basically the icon for Instanet, or basically their logo, if you will. And that's going to take us directly into TransactionDesk, where we're going to start off our file. Now you can see it's already pulling the MLS number in, it's already pulling the address, but there's a couple key pieces that if you follow these, it'll be a breeze creating your contracts, and even easier when you get into the signing portion. So we've already started pulling the data, but the next thing we want to do is we want to apply our sales package. Now, if you're looking in TransactionDesk and you don't see this template, that's because it means your office has never created them, or you haven't created one. But we're all going to create a template today, so don't worry. If you don't see anything there, by the end of this class, you will, I promise. So for me, the convenience of TransactionDesk is the fact that everything I would use in my listing packet or my sales packet, and you know what I mean, if you are at an office, you generally have one of these big ugly deal files laying around somewhere, right? And you go in, you grab your package of forms and you throw them in the back of your car like I used to do, and then 3 years later you grab that and it's all outdated anyway. The idea is you have your online package with you at all times, because now you can just log in from anywhere and you can access it, even your phone, by the way. So if you take the time to set up your packet, your listing packet or your sales packet, or even a lease packet, or if your brokerage does that, that means all the forms are automatically going to pop in your transaction. You don't have to find them, which makes it so much easier. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to apply our buy-side packet. My company calls it a buyer package. It might say sales package, but the idea is that you want to pick your buyer packet because that's now going to bring in all your buy-side forms. The next question is, who are you in this transaction? If Tammy on our call is lucky enough to represent both sides and double dip it, that's a really nice day. So she would obviously just select both, and it's going to fill in her name on the listing side and sales side. But really, there already is a listing agent, and so I'm going to be the selling agent. Now, this is a little bit weird for me because I was kind of always taught 22 years ago the selling agent was the listing agent. But remember, we're a little bit different here in Michigan, and this is a nationwide program. So in this case, I'm not the listing agent. I'm going to be the selling agent, or the person representing the buyer. The terminology is a little bit different, so I just like to point that out. And then, of course, if you're a transaction coordinator or you're just pushing some paperwork, you could also select neither. But really, in our example today, we're just going to pick that we are the selling agent because my good friend Tom listed it, and we're going to go ahead and hit the create button. Now, behind the scenes, what it's actually doing is it's gathering all the information from that listing, and it's pulling it directly into my sales package. All of my forms are there, all of the information is going to come over and start that auto population so that I don't have to fill out all those additional fields. So let's take a look at what it's pulling in. The first thing you see is it's actually pulling in the property photo, but it's also pulling in the address, the city, the county, the state, the tax ID number, the school district, the year built, what type of property it is, and it goes on and on. The subdivision, the lengthy legal description, all of that is now carrying over. So if Tammy were doing a real life purchase agreement, if she was really writing this up, what she would do is she would scroll down to the purchase side, because think of this wizard, and that's kind of what we're in. It says it right here. We're kind of like in this transaction creating wizard. It's walking us through step by step. So the only thing we can't really pull in is, what does Tammy's buyer want to pay? So we're going to say Tammy's buyer is going to offer 2.8. Again, just once, I'd like to get in that price range. And we're going to say that Tammy's buyer is putting down a $10,000 EMD. Okay, so that's information that only Tammy's buyer is going to know. So there's nowhere to auto-populate that. However, here's your first cheat, and I love this. If you scroll down a little farther, now, and kind of think, as I mentioned, it's generic. You're always going to fill out which side of the transaction that you're on. So in Tammy's case, she's representing the buyer, so she's filling out the purchase information. But here's your first little cheat or workaround. If Tammy is asking for things like maybe she's asking for the washer, the dryer, and the built-in, let's say, wine bar. She can actually type that right into property includes. And what will happen is any line calling for the appliances and inclusions will automatically be populated with what Tammy's filled in here. Same thing for excludes. So in my company, we actually have 3 different lines that this would carry over to on 3 different contracts. So instead of me going in and filling out 3 separate contracts with the same information, by filling it into the wizard right here, I've done just that automatically. Now down here, property excludes. So let's say that there is a hideous play structure in the backyard and you want that to be removed. Same thing, it will also carry over any exclusions and it will fill those out on your purchase side contracts. All right, so the more information you fill into the wizard, the better off your forms are going to be filled out. The more information is going to flow into those forms. But basically, the wizard is simply 5 steps. If you just hit next, it'll guide you all the way through. However, once you've used the wizard a few times, you're going to know all of these steps. So I'm also going to show you how to set up your dashboard so you can do all of this from one easy screen. The next thing here is obviously dates. So maybe we're making our offer today. We're going to just simply click on that date. Maybe we're asking them to apply for a mortgage within 7 days and get a title commitment within 30. All of that can be done right here. However, now I'm just going to throw this out there because I don't know each one of you individually that are on the call. Some people are super tech savvy, right? They're going to use this. They want to get all the bells and whistles. They want to know all the ways to automate it. Other people are just starting and they're kind of like, you know, Colleen, just show me the basics. Show me how to fill the forms out. That's all I need. And that's fine. I do kind of want to show you one a little bit more advanced feature, but I think it will help a lot of you on the call. So I just kind of want to point it out. So generally in real estate, things are related to something being completed in a transaction. Like for instance, when you get a call from the lender and you get that clear to close, well, that's the time you want to schedule your closing, right? If you list a property, I want to order my sign right away. There are certain things that are always going to be based on something being completed in the transaction. However, if you're on a team or if you're like me and you work a lot at the MLS and I'm only doing this part-time now, I want ways to automate the process. I want ways to have reminders automatically sent to me so I don't miss anything. So what TransactionDesk did is they built checklists and tasks. Okay, so let's take a look at these. Now, you do not have to use these to fill out a transaction. This is totally optional. I just really like it because it helps me stay on track. So let's take a look at one of the tasks. I'm going to jump out of the wizard for just a moment, and you don't have to do this. Again, this is just totally optional, but I want to show you how you can automate your transactions to make them a little bit easier. So I'm going to say, Tammy, we're going to kind of switch roles for Tammy for a second. I'm going to say that Tammy is listing a property. And Tammy wants to make sure that she installs a sign for every new listing that she takes. Or maybe Tammy's on a team and someone on her team is in charge of putting up the signs for her listing. So I can go in and I can create a listing task name, and I can say, you have 4 date options, if you will. I can say that it is due on a specific date, but really a sign would never be due on a specific date, right? Until I list the property, I don't need the sign. So I can say it's related to a task completion. I can say it's related to a transaction date, or there's no due date at all. In this case, I'm going to relate it to a transaction date. I'm going to say 1 day after the listing, the list date, I want a reminder to put up that sign. Again, I can even assign it to a team member. So if you're on a team, you can add your team members in, and I can assign it so they automatically get an email that, hey, I've listed a property and you need to go put up the sign. So basically, that's what a task is. It's just a reminder that's automated that will be sent to your email so that you don't miss any crucial steps in the transaction. So what is a checklist? A checklist is just a group of tasks that are all combined together for a listing or a sale. So it keeps you on task for every single transaction. So hopefully that makes sense. You do not have to do that. It's totally optional. But if you're looking for ways to better automate the experience between your team or keep a better communication, that's a great way to do it. Otherwise, if you just fill out your dates, you're good there too. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over to step 3 now. If you did those couple of easy steps, what I mean is if you started at the actual listing, the MLS listing ticket, and you clicked that blue splash icon, it already knows who had the property listed. So we already know this gentleman listed it, and it already has your contact information. So when you get into step 3, what it's saying is, oh yeah, Tom Lipinski, he's our listing agent. Here's the brokerage he's with. Oh yeah, Colleen, or in this case, Tammy is our selling agent, and the brokerage that Tammy's with. Those are already put in for you. However, the most important step of the entire transaction is right here. You've got to add in the buyer and sellers that you're working with, maybe an attorney. If you add in the parties you're working with on this step, I promise you, when you go to Authentisign, it's going to have all the signatures in place. It's going to have the tagging in place. It'll say, oh, Tom's the buyer. Tom's going to sign here. Or Sally's the seller. Sally's going to be signing here. It will do all that for you. So let's take a look. So in this case, Tammy's working with the buyer. So she's going to go up to add a contact. And she could add herself, but we already took care of that for you. She could add someone that she's worked with previously. Or in this case, she could create a brand new transaction contact, and that's what we're going to do. All right, here's that really crucial step. This is what makes it work. Because she's working with a buyer, you want to make sure in the drop-down under type that you're selecting buyer so it knows where the buyer should be signing on all of the contracts. We have to tell it who the buyer is before we know where it's going to tag it. So basically, when I say that Barry is the buyer, now it looks at the contracts and says, oh, buyer signatures go here, here, and here. So when we get into Authentisign, it's that much easier because that part's done for you. So let's actually walk through the process. So Barry is our buyer. And so we're going to call him Barry Buyer, for example. And of course, you're going to put in Barry Buyer's email address. I'm actually going to put in mine just because I want to show you on the signing side what the buyer is going to receive. There's also, now in the normal case of a buyer, this is all the information you need to put in. You could put in address information and more if you really wanted to, but really in the case of most buyers, that's all you need. However, there's always those unique things in real estate, right? Like maybe it's a corporation and Barry's actually signing on behalf of a corporation. Maybe it's a power of attorney, or maybe he's a trustee for an estate. Sometimes they need to sign in a different capacity than their actual name. So that's what these 3 are for down here. So if Barry Buyer is signing as trustee for or power of attorney trustee, for Sally Smith, or power of attorney for John Smith, whatever you put in the legal name is what will show up underneath the signature line. What you put in the preferred signature is how the signature will be created for them. So kind of think of using these only in the cases of power of attorneys, corporations, or estates, things like that nature. For the normal buyer, you're just going to put in first, last name, and email address, hit save, but do make sure that you've said whether they're a seller or a buyer. And now we have Barry Buyer all set up as our contact. All right, so we're ready to go on to the next step. And remember, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in that questions box, which is in that GoToWebinar panel. All right, so this is where it gets really good. So of course, because I applied my sales package or my buyer package, all of the forms, as you can see, have been dropped in here for me. So now, and maybe you're like me, I have a little OCD. I kind of like my forms in a particular order. You can literally drag and drop those forms. You just grab the form thumbnail to the left, and you can literally drag and drop them in any order you want. I kind of always learned 22 years ago to have my agency on top. So that's just the way I was trained, and that's generally how I've always done it. So if there's a certain order you want your forms to be in, you can drag and drop them into that order, or better yet, when you create your own template today, put them in the order that you want, and they'll always be set up in that order. So the other thing too is if there is a form that you need that isn't in your packet should be very generic, so something you would use every time. But let's say Tammy knows that this home has a swimming pool, and she's looking for a swimming pool addendum. She can simply go up to the Add button, and basically it's going to open up all the forms that you have the options to use, so all of the library of forms for you. But let's say Tammy doesn't know, is that a MAR form, or is that a company form, or is that like a Michigan Realtor form? What is that? Which form would I use? You can always go up to the search box, simply type in a keyword like pool, and immediately the 4 pool addendums that I have access to pop right up. Same thing, let's use another example. Let's say that you're looking for an FHA addendum. You can type in FHA, and I can see all of the FHA addendums that I now have access to. If I want to use this one from my company, I'm simply going to select it, hit add, and now it's thrown into my form list. So pretty easy. The whole key here is I don't have to really go look for a lot of forms, because my company has them all here for me. So again, if you have not created a form package, we're going to do that today. But everything from the home warranty to my checklist to my turn-in sheet, everything is here for me. Now, this next part's was a little confusing to me, I have to be honest, because when I got my license, a form was a document and a document was a form. But clearly on step 4, they're asking us for forms. So basically, think of forms as anything that Instanet or TransactionDesk basically has created for you and is made available where you could kind of fill it in. So anything in these libraries. So if I go to, again, if I go to Grosse Pointe and I'm looking for a particular form, these are all forms where I can just basically fill in the blanks, right? So what is a document then? So if I jump over to step 5, it's got documents here. By the way, there's a bunch of documents I've never seen. What are those? Documents are anything outside of what's been prepared in TransactionDesk for you. So anything outside those fillable forms. What I mean is you're going to have things like pre-title for the property. You may want to bring that in. You may have a copy of their pre-approval letter. You want to bring that in. You may have something like a copy of their EMD check. You want to have that in here. But when we opened this up just a moment ago, you can see there are all these other things in here. So let me explain what this is. And I love this, by the way. It used to be very cumbersome. This is something that changed not too long ago, and I absolutely love it. And what I mean by that is before, when you were ready to write an offer, if Tammy's writing on this beautiful listing here, she would also have to go in to get the disclosures, the seller's disclosure or lead-based paint disclosure for that property, right? Because the buyer has to sign that. So I would have to go in, I would have to get the seller's disclosure, I would have to click on it, I would have to download it, I'd then have to pull it in. It was just kind of a big mess, right? It was a lot of extra steps. So here's my seller's disclosure, got to download it, now I got to save it, now I got to bring it into the file because I want my buyer to sign this with all the other docs, especially if I'm using Authentisign. I don't want to send them like 5 different envelopes to sign, right? So that's what we did. We took all of those documents that are under the associated docs and we moved them into your transaction for you. That means when you're ready to have your buyer sign the buyer's agency, the purchase agreement, you also can have them fill out the sign the seller's disclosure as well. All of those are brought over for you. And I love when Tom did this because he created this beautiful offer worksheet. He created a whole nice feature sheet. These are all things I can send with my forms. This talks about all the features of the home. He included all of those right in his in that associated doc section, so they come right over into my transaction for me, so they can sign everything at once, which I think makes it so much easier. So how do you get those documents in? Well, the documents that are under the associated docs right here, they're automatically brought in for you. There's nothing you have to do. But what if you have that pre-title or that pre-approval, or you've got some documentation you want to bring in and have them sign as well? Maybe you're on a team and you want to talk about your team marketing. All you have to do to bring those in is click on the add button, just like we did when we added a contact, and you can literally drag and drop up to 20 files at once right on this blue strip and have them loaded in. So let me see what I got in my downloads. Do I have anything I can pull in quickly? Let's say that, yeah, we'll use this. So let's say this is pre-approval for Helen. I can literally grab that pre-approval. I can lay it on that drag and drop strip, and you can see immediately that pre-approval has now been added. So it's not hard. Now, generally, when I'm creating a listing or I'm taking a new listing, I create a listing folder on my desktop. So you can bring up to 20 files in at one time. If you simply click on the drag and drop strip, you could say, well, you know what, I want to bring in this document, and this document. You can literally click the button and you can see that I just brought in 3 documents. Within seconds, they're now part of my documents. So they can sign everything at once, and you also want to have it for your records. So 5 years from now, when hopefully they call you to sell the home, you can see everything in that file. You can just mark it closed and go back to it when you need it. All right, so we're going to pretend for just a moment that Tammy is sitting at her desk, because let's face it, if everything was electronic, it would be super easy, right? So if everything was electronic and we never had those weird scenarios, it would be great. But let's face it, there are going to be times you're literally sitting at your desk and someone's going to come over and they're going to bring you an offer to purchase, and it's on paper, right? Now you got to get it into TransactionDesk. So a couple ways to do that. One, of course, you can simply scan it and then do that drag and drop that I showed you. You can also fax directly into a transaction file, and I'll show you that in a minute. But once that document is in there, now I want to counter it, because, you know, Tammy says, yeah, that's great, but I need to make changes. I don't want to grab a pen and start marking up the contract, because that always looks kind of messy. So what you can do is you can actually counter a document when it's in TransactionDesk. Everyone can sign it, and now I can send it on to the co-oping agent. So let's take a look at that next. So we're going to pretend for just a moment that Tammy did just what we showed. She added a document in. Because I don't have a purchase agreement, I'm just going to jump back here for just a moment. And I'm going to say, okay, so Tammy's got her purchase agreement in here, and she now wants to counter that. She says, you know, Colleen, your $2.8 million offer is great, but we're looking for the full $3 million. So there's a bunch of tools that will appear on the documents. So one of the tools is the Markup Tool. So I'm just going to take a look at that first. Kind of looks like that painter's palette, if you will. And they're basically just PDF markup tools. I'm going to try to blow this up a little bit just to make it a little easier on your eyes. I'm kind of blind these days. So, all right, if I scroll down here, Now, one of the things you should already notice is, remember that inclusion I talked about? We were asking for the washer, the dryer, and the built-in wine bar. Do you see how that's already auto-flowing right into my contract? That helps a whole lot. So as I scroll down, I can see the play structures being excluded from the sale, but here's my price right here, right? $2,008,000. Well, what I want to do is I actually want to counter that price. Now, if I want to counter the terms, let's say we're not going to include the washer, the dryer, or the built-in wine bar. I can just grab the line tool. And of course, in my brokerage, now everyone would have to initial in order for that change to be effective. Down here, I don't really just want to put a line through that, right? Because then that really doesn't help me. We can't read it anyway. So what I really want to do is I actually want to counter that. So I'm just going to remove the line. And I want to counter that up. I'm going to blow it up a little bit bigger because it makes it kind of small because it's such a large number. All right, so I want to go now to my text box. And I generally like to do the text box in an area that's easier to see, if you will. So if you click on that text box, try to draw it in an area where there's no other verbiage. It just makes it a little bit easier to work with those boxes. So Tammy's saying, you know, Colleen, it's a great offer, but we're asking for the full $3 million. So I'm going to go ahead, type in that $3 million. Now you can see if I did that, how ridiculous. My OCD is like going crazy. I could never turn in a counter that looked like that. So there's a few things we need to do. The first thing is we obviously need to adjust the font size so that it matches the text on the actual form. So I'm going to guess that's probably about an 8 font, which I think that's pretty close. You can also change the font type. So if it doesn't match, if it's more of a scripty font, you can choose the font type. But in this case, I'm going to say, okay, 3 million, but still, if I lay that on there, look at how terrible. You can't read it. I mean, it's a hot mess. So what we're going to do is I'm going to shrink up this box a little bit just to kind of make it easier to see. But instead of keeping that box transparent so it looks like a hot mess behind it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to change that transparency to white. Okay. So by changing, and obviously I would take time and really format the box so it's even smaller so that I can work with it a little bit better. But the idea is I'm going to take that 3 million and now I'm going to move it directly onto the line. So it looks a lot nicer. And of course I can make it larger or smaller so it fits in even better. You can use the arrows to shrink and maximize the box, if you will. The whole goal, though, is to make it match, right? So now I can go ahead and effectively counter this and then send it over to the listing agent. By the way, you can also make it bold. I think it was previously bold on there as well. So we can do bold. You can change the font color even. So you can do a whole bunch of things there to make it match. If you wanted to highlight, maybe you got them a 2-year home warranty and you wanted to point out, oh, got you a 2-year home warranty, you can use the highlighter tool. There is this free draw. I'm going to be honest, I really don't like that one. Sometimes I find it a little tricky. Some people also like to use the redact, and they use that more for if you don't want to have any blank lines. You can actually use the redact so that every line has something on it, so it does look completely filled in. That's what a redact is for. But basically, these markup tools come in really handy when you need to make a change. And by the way, I love the markup tools in the app. You can quickly just counter something. You can quickly do up a quick addendum. The app is great. I'm going to show you more about that in just a couple of moments, but it's really great countering tools. All right, my favorite feature, though, is a relatively new feature, and that is the document slicer tool, which is right over here. Now, by the way, all of these tools can be found in multiple places within the Transaction Desk program. The document slicer tool, I'm just going to say, let's say, yes, I want to save my changes. The document slicer tool is basically where you may have gotten, let me give you kind of a good example. Sometimes it makes more sense if I give this example first. So Tammy is working with her buyer. Her buyer is signing the seller's disclosure, the offer to purchase, but Tammy's also having him sign the buyer's agency. And the buyer's agency, like for my company, has how much he was looking for, the areas he was looking for, his cell phone, his address, his contact information. It's a buyer agency between me and the buyer, and that has confidential information. But of course, Tammy sent out all this stuff so that the buyer could sign it all together. So it's one big, nice PDF, everything signed. But now Tammy wants to turn around. She's driving in the car. She wants to turn that PDF around and send it back to me. The problem is Tammy doesn't want me to have that one confidential document, or maybe that one page that's confidential. But he signed everything together, so it's in one PDF. But she wants to take that one page or that one document out before it comes to me. But she's driving, so she doesn't want to go all the way back to the office, print off everything, rescan it in, and that would be a pain, right? So that's why the document slicer tool was created. You can slice off one page or one document. So let's say in this case, Tammy is going to send me the first 5 pages of this 7-page document. We're going to pretend that this is the buyer's agency right down here. So Tammy doesn't want to send me these. She wants to just email me these 5 pages. So she's going to highlight or click on the pages that she wants to send me. She's then going to go up to save, and she's basically making a new PDF just of what I'm going to receive. So maybe she's going to call this counter offer for Colleen. Okay, and what we're going to do is, I always like to do a save as, because I always like to keep my original intact. I just want to save a copy of it. So I'm going to do a save as, my selected pages, and basically I've just now created a 5-page document with just what I want to send that co-oping agent. So again, if I scroll all the way over to documents at the bottom, I'm going to find my counter offer for Colleen right here. And of course, now I could go ahead and email this right over to that co-oping agent. Okay, so that is really the idea. It took that 7 pages, as you can see, down to just 5, and I could do it from the palm of my hand right through the app. All right, so congratulations. You went through the entire wizard, and you're probably thinking, lady with the fuzzy hair, I haven't seen one form yet. So you're right. You've gone through the wizard, you've done all the hard work. Now, in order to go through and add anything additional to the forms, you can click right on the form name, and that's going to take you into the form wizard where you can add any additional pieces. By the way, under this transaction forms button, you can jump from form to form throughout your transaction. So if you want to start with the purchase agreement, actually, let's start there. So we're going to look at our purchase agreement. Do you see how much auto population is now flowing in that purchase agreement? We've got the listing agent, the brokerage, the ID, the office ID. All of that is carrying over. The lengthy legal description, what we're offering, what we're including, all of that is now carrying over. Of course, there are times we need to add additional information in. So you can go in, you can add a new form, you can copy. And a lot of people say, Colleen, why on earth would you copy a form? What I do is when I am sitting on the listing side, when I am sitting with a seller, I generally will do a net out sheet a little bit on the higher side of the price and a little bit on the lower side of the price. So what I do is I copy my net out sheet. It carries over the address, it carries over my home warranty fee, and then I just tweak the numbers so that I have both a high and a low seller's net. So that would be a good example of why you might want to copy it. You could remove a form, you could print off the forms, you can of course send forms via email or via fax, you can mark them up from here. Pretty self-explanatory. There are also something called clauses. I mean, font's pretty explanatory, but clauses work like this. And if you don't see the clause button, by the way, it just means you or your brokerage have never created a clause to use. But I love clauses. The reason I do is sometimes I will get the language down just perfect, and then the next time I try to think of how I said that, I like totally botch it up and it doesn't sound right. So that's where clauses come into effect. A clause is basically legal language that maybe a broker has already pre-approved, or maybe language that you've used that you thought, oh my gosh, that was perfectly written. Save that to a clause. So here's how it works. If I'm writing an addendum and I go to my clauses, and by the way, you can have office clauses, personal clauses, but let's say in this case, I'm looking for a home inspection clause or a home warranty clause. I can have those already pre-set up. So maybe I want to say something like all appliances to stay with the home at the time of sale. Maybe I have a home warranty clause not to exceed this amount at the time of closing. Maybe I also want to use a seller concession clause. The seller will contribute to the buyer's closing costs in the amount of, but not to exceed, whatever I want it to be. I can save that language and simply select it when I have that type of scenario come up. So basically, with 3 clicks, I just inserted all of that information. And as you can see, you can change it once it's in here. So maybe I want to put in not to exceed 5,000 or a certain percentage amount. You can actually change it once it's been added. So clauses are great ways to add a lot of information quickly. It's also a great way to make sure that your broker's okay with the language that you're using. So if you are a broker, I can't recommend enough setting up your clauses so agents aren't coming up with their own legal language. I know my broker's always saying, Colleen, you're not an attorney, just use what I've already set up, which I think is probably a pretty good piece of advice. All right, and of course you have your strikeouts and your markups in here as well. So the idea is once you've done that auto population, all of that information is now flowing directly into your forms. But should you need to make any changes to them, then you can go in, just click on the name of the form, and you can go in and edit it. Now, as I mentioned, the wizard is great, and when you're getting started with Transaction Desk, it's great to go through the wizard so you don't miss anything. However, once you do this a few times, you're going to be like, okay, I need an easier way. I don't want to click, click, click. I want to do everything from one screen. That's the transaction dashboard idea. So what I've done is everything that's in the wizard, I've added right to my dashboard. For example, let's say that Barry is married and we need to add the spouse. Instead of going all the way back to the wizard, I could simply click on the contact section, click on add contact. Just the same exact screens are going to pop up as you saw in the wizard. So I'm going to say, okay, well, Barry's wife, we're going to call her Bertha. We're going to call Bertha buyer, and we're going to put in her email address as well. So the idea is instead of having to go all the way through the wizard each time, I can simply do that right from the dashboard screen. But you do have to set it up. In my opinion, what they give you out of the box, not so good. So in order to set it up, you have to unlock this feature, and then you're simply going to drag and drop what you want to be located on your dashboard. By the way, you can make these boxes smaller or larger. You can tweak it so it looks just like you want. If you have something on there that you don't want, you can also simply just click the X and remove it. The ones I do recommend you have are the overview, which kind of gives you the detail, the contacts, so you can quickly add an attorney or add a contact, forms and documents, pretty important, you want to have both of those, but I also recommend that you add the Authentisign box, because anything your client signs automatically comes back into the transaction for you. So I can go and I can see all of the signed or closing docs. I can see everything. When they sign it, it automatically comes back into this file. And I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second. Once you've got your boxes all set up, just hit that lock. And it's going to go ahead and lock your dashboard so you can do everything that you could do through the wizard from one easy screen. All right, so I probably talked your ear off by now, but basically we've covered the entire buy side. So just kind of as a recap, and by the way, I'm recording this today, so you can watch this class in the future if you missed something. I know I talk kind of fast to cover so much, but if you've missed something, you can watch this class at any time. So keep in mind what we did so far was we went all the way into our Paragon system. We showed the property. So we brought up our property on Lakeshore. We found it. We said, oh, yep, that's That's the property. Helps if I don't fat finger it. There we go. I found the property on Lakeshore. Now I'm looking at the icon for TransactionDesk. I click that and I start the whole auto flowing of the information into TransactionDesk. However, as I mentioned, I think the most confusing thing about TransactionDesk is you start in a completely different place if you're on the listing side. So if you have any questions on the buy side, go ahead and throw them into the questions box. Oh, good. How do you add the Authentisign, or is it already there? Okay, great question. It does not come there automatically, and I assume you mean the dashboard part. So let me show you how to do that. So Authentisign, and actually what I'm going to do is I will take it out and I'll show you how to add it in. So really good question. So good question came in. How do you add, and I believe what she means is how do you add the Authentisign box to the dashboard? So you're going to unlock. So this little lock is right here, and you won't be able to do it when that lock is on. So you're going to unlock it, and you're going to find the green. I haven't added any of the blue boxes because really you could do all of that right from over here. It's not a big deal. What I like to do though is you're going to find the green boxes, and you're going to see one of them says Authentisign. Green means doing an action. So I'm going to grab that Authentisign, and I'm simply going to drag it right onto my dashboard, and you can put it anywhere you want. And again, you can make them smaller or larger if you want to, but I just drag it onto the dashboard and then make sure you lock up your dashboard when you're done. And again, the ones I recommend you put on there are the overview. So the detail overview, these are all green, by the way, contacts, forms, documents, and Authentisign. Those are the 5 boxes I recommend you add because those are all things that you would do right through the wizard. So thank you so much. I was getting worried because no one was asking questions. So thank you so much, Vilma. All right. And okay, so now let's talk about the listing side. So we covered that you always start from the MLS on the buy side. But where do you start when you're talking about creating a new listing? Well, Tom is great, but if I'm starting my own listing, I don't really want to trust that Tom put in all the information correctly. I want to get it from a more trusted source, meaning I want to get it from the municipality or the tax record. So where do we go to start that process? Well, the answer is right under resources. I want you to think of resources as your toolbox. Think of it where all your tools are. Excuse me, where Cloud CMA is, where List Track is, where your market stats are. Think of it as kind of like a big toolbox. So when you're starting a new listing, you're going to go to Online Forms and you're going to click on TransactionDesk. That's going to take you in so that you can create a new listing from the tax record. Because again, as much as I love Tom and he's so efficient, he's really, really good. How do I know he put in all the information correctly? Or maybe the property's never been listed before. So now I want to go in and I would trust the tax records more. So when you're creating a new listing, you're going to go over to this little house icon on the left. This is going to show you all of your transactions. By the way, you can filter transactions too. I recommend closing things as they close because then you don't have this huge long list. You can just show your actives or open files if you want. But in this case, we want to start a brand new listing. So we're going to go up to the Add button. And there's a little trick to this, so you might want to jot this down. And I apologize, I wish I could make it even less confusing, but there is a little trick here because tax records are very, very exact. So here's a little key. So let's say that we are listing a new property, and we're going to call it 41539 Wessel Drive. Some people like to name their transactions after client names. And that's okay, except that if Tom Smith buys 5 houses from you and they're all named Tom Smith, how do you find the one you're wanting to work on, right? So what I recommend is put the transaction address in and dash the client name if that's more helpful. Now, of course, the key to this whole thing is templates. We're going to set up a template in just a moment, but I simply want to pick my listing package because this is going to be a new house I'm listing. Here's where it gets good though. I don't want to have to fill out an entire transaction when the information already exists at the assessor's office. So what I want to do is I simply want to pull the data, but instead of pulling it from the MLS, I want to pull it from the tax record or the property record within Realist. Now, it's not pulling in things like square footage or other things like that. What it's pulling in is going to be the basic property record. So I'm going to click on Realist, and I am going to now use the secret button. Now, I have to be honest. When Brian was working on this, and Brian is our Chief Technical Officer, he's so smart. He can write code in his basement. He makes all the data flow. I mean, he does things I could never dream of doing. But when he built this and he showed it to me, and he's like, Colleen, this is going to be great. All you got to do is put in the tax ID now. And I'm like, Brian, we don't memorize tax IDs. We memorize addresses. So where do I put the address? And he's like, oh, see, that's where tech does not meet real life real estate. Right? So what we're going to do is we are going to kind of cheat the system. We don't know the tax ID, and we don't want to have to look it up because that's what we're trying to find. So we're going to actually go over to the magnifying glass to the right, but here's where it gets really a little bit more detailed. So make a little note here. The more information you put into your tax search, the least amount of probability you're going to have in finding your record. So here's what I mean. Tax records are so exact, I only want you to fill out 3 fields of information. Because let's say you live in Richmond Township and you spell out township, but actually in the lookup, the township is TWP. It won't pull for you. So you want to think of it this way. You want to put in less information. Less is best. It's kind of like Google, right? The less information you put in, the more results you're going to get. So here's what we want to do. We want to put in the county, the street number, and only the route street name, where it says street name only. Only this. So for instance, this is Wessel Drive. But leave off the drives, leave off the ways, leave off the places, avenues, boulevards, leave all of those off. Just put in these 3 fields: county, street number, and route street name. If you do that, I promise you, just like you're going to see here, immediately you will get a tax result. It'll give you the address, the owner name, parcel. You're going to check it off. You're going to hit select. And you are now going to create your packet. So basically what it's done behind the scenes is it's gone out to that tax record. It's now pulled the information. So let's see what it brought in. Brought in our street number, street name, city, county, tax ID, year built, school district. You see how the information is already starting to fly? It's bringing in the subdivision, the legal description. Where it gets really cool is it also on step 3 of our wizard, where we're talking about the seller. You can see it automatically imported the seller's name. And by the way, if 3 or 4 or 5 people own it, it will bring over the owners of record. So it will also label them seller. So in the signing process, this is where it gets cool. In the signing process, it's going to know, oh, they're the seller. They're going to sign here, here, and here, and it will lay the tags out for you. So you don't have to do a lot when you're in Authentisign. All right, so let's jump over. I want to show you a couple other cool things. Well, at least I think they're cool. I was always that agent who, when they're filling out the seller's disclosure, you'd go on your listing appointment and, you'd slide across their seller's disclosure, right? And inevitably, they would not realize that there's the NA field. So now they got like 9 scratch offs, right? You know what I'm talking about? Then they would go down and they'd say, well, I know we have a warranty. Hold on, let me find the warranty on the roof because I want to put that on here. And, meanwhile, you've measured the rooms like 3 times. You want to go home and make dinner. It's like, it gets crazy. So what I decided is, well, then I'll leave them behind. I'll say, okay, they really need this form, but things are selling so fast. A lot of times we're getting offers the day they're listed. I don't have time to drive all the way across town, pick up the disclosure. They don't have a machine at home to get it back to me. So it became kind of a little bit cumbersome. So Instanet had this great idea. What if you could send your seller's disclosure to their email. They could fill it out in their email very easily and hit save, and it came right back to your file and to you, the agent. And that's exactly what they built. So the seller's disclosure, if you're new, I just want to be very clear, this is the only form I would ever do this with. The seller's disclosure is never, well, at least it's never supposed to be filled out by the agent. It's always supposed to be filled out by the homeowner. And the reason is the agent doesn't know the condition of the property. This is really for the homeowner to tell the buyer what they know about the property. But unfortunately, as I mentioned, a lot of times, you know, they won't see this not available comment. They'll do 9 unknowns and they're like, oh, wait a minute, that's just not available. You know, so it gets a little bit cumbersome. So what if you could send this ahead? And that's exactly what you can do through TransactionDesk. You can go to File and Send via email. Now, this is the only form they're really filling out. I don't want them filling out a purchase agreement, right? They don't know what to put on those lines. I don't want them filling out a listing agreement. I do that as the agent. But in this case, the seller's disclosure is a form that they're going to need to fill out. So I want to go ahead and put in their name, like, okay, Sally Seller. And I want to put in their email address. I'm just going to use mine for the sake of our example today. You could put in a nice little subject line like see you Friday on our listing appointment. And then you could put in a message if you want to. But the difference is normally when you're sending documents, you are sending them as a locked attachment. If you're using Authentisign, it automatically does that for you. However, in this case, I want to send it as a live link because I want them to be able to edit or fill out the forms. And I'm going to say, well, if I'm listing the house on Saturday, I want to make sure I get it back by Friday so it's all completed. Couple cool things about this. If you get your clients to fill it out this way, it also gives you a chance to look at it and review it before your listing appointment. Now, of course, they can fill it all out. You can look at it. You could send it via Authentisign. Or for me, 90% of the time, I'm usually meeting my sellers. So I just print it off with my other documents and take it with me. Now, let's actually take a look at what they see, because that's always my biggest concern. You know, is it going to be easy for them to open? You know, are they going to be able to figure out how to go through and do this? So the nice thing, and I'm just going to open up my email here so you can kind of see it. The nice thing is it comes from you, the agent, because let's face it, your seller has no idea who TransactionDesk is. They have no idea who, you know, the Authentisign comes from. They do know you. So as you can see, Sally Seller just got it, but it came from me, Colleen Delange. It's going to give them some brief instructions. And then down below, it's got all my contact information in case they have a question. However, all they have to do really is click on the link to the form. It gives them a very streamlined version to fill out. And then they can go ahead and fill it out, hit save, and it automatically comes back to me. And as you can see, it's pretty easy for them. If they do make a mistake, they can unselect it. They can fill out all of those fillable fields, which gives them time to, you know, fill it all in, pull out those home warranties if they had one, or a roof warranty, whatever it happens to be. And then all they have to do is hit File and Save, and immediately that is going to email it back to you, the agent. They can also save a copy. And by the way, right down here, you'll see that I, as the agent, just got a message from TransactionDesk that this form has been filled out. So if I go back to my email, it says, hey, agent, your form was opened by Sally Seller, and she has now filled it out. So the idea is that by simply going in, and by the way, they can print off a copy, they can save a copy, but the idea is that they can take their time and fill it out, and I don't have to sit there or drive all the way back to pick up the form. So they can fill the seller's disclosure out that way. One of the other really great enhancements, jump back into TransactionDesk here, is the MiRealSource data form. And I got to tell you, nobody knows that this is here, but I think it's really cool. So obviously, when I'm preparing for my listing, there are certain things I don't know. Like I don't know what the final listing price is going to be. I don't know the room measurements, but I do know how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, because I'm doing a CMA. I'm going over there to list the house, right? So in your data form, And I love the data form because I think it's a heck of a lot easier than trying to use the input screen in Paragon. But what I like about the data form is it's pretty easy to read. I know everything in red is required. I certainly like the way it opens up the features because I think the features when you're adding your listings into Paragon are really small and a little cumbersome. I like that I can just go check, check, check right down the list and I'm done. However, if you're doing all of that, and now you're going into Paragon and entering all the same information, what a nightmare, right? You're entering all the same information twice. What if I told you there was a button that would take it right from this form and build your listing in Paragon for you? Now, by the way, some admins put in listings at some offices. This can also send it directly to your admin, meaning it will build the listing. Your admin can review it and add in anything additional. So I've been so blessed. I've worked with so many great admins over the years. I was at the same company for 20 years, and I had a vacant piece of land that was $47,000. I turned in my listing turn-in sheet, my data sheet, like here. Unfortunately, those admins are working so hard. They're answering the phone, they're taking showing appointments, they're inputting listings, they're helping people coming through, getting people set up for closings, right? So they're doing all of that. So my listing actually went into the MLS at $470,000. So just a little difference for a small piece of vacant land. So the idea is instead of the admin having to rekey in 200 fields of information, wouldn't it be nice if you just filled the data sheet out, which you got to give her anyway, right? Wouldn't it be nice if you could just click the button, it takes all the information that you've added and sends it over to the admin for review? That's exactly what it does. So whether you enter your listings or your admin enters your listings, you can still click the listing upload button. So, but let me also tell you exactly how it works. I'm just going to show you. Now, I'm not going to fill in every red required because we'd be here all day, right? And we want to get to the e-signing. So I'm going to hit upload listing. And basically what happens is it creates a partial listing. The reason it doesn't create a live listing is because, of course, you want to add your photos first. You do never, ever want to make a listing live without photos. And I'll tell you a story that happened to me. I had a seller that was calling me 24 hours after the listing was entered, and they were so upset with me because there were no photos on Zillow. So let me kind of explain why you want it to be a partial first, because it makes more sense if I explain it. So it kind of works like a bus. If you go in and you enter the listing and then 5 minutes later, let's say 5 minutes later, you get the photos all edited, you hit the save, you would think in 15 minutes, which is our agreement with Zillow, that the photos would show up there or Realtor.com or anywhere else, right? However, photos nowadays are such high resolution. Many of the places only will pull high resolution photos because it slows everything down. They will only pull once a day or once every other day. So you could actually have your hot new listing out on IDX with no photos. And unfortunately, when buyers don't see photos, they generally go on to the next listing. So you want to make sure you've added your photos in first. The reason I say it's like a bus is sometimes, so let's say you did put your listing in, you forgot to add the photos, you now put them in. If the bus is coming, if they're doing the draw right now, well, you might get your photos there in a short amount of time. However, if the bus just left the station, it could be 2 full days before those photos actually end up on those IDX sites. So I literally had a seller who was just absolutely irate. And I thought, well, gosh, I added the photo 5 minutes later. Why is this taking so long? Well, keep in mind, you don't want to have that angry call. It actually works like a bus. You want to make sure you've got those photos in there before you hit save. You can still create the partial. You can have the partial in there for up to 180 days. And then you could even resave the partial and give you another 180 days. So the idea is you do want to go into the partial though and now add your photos. So I'm going to go into listings where your partials will be. I'm going to go into the partial section. Your admin, by the way, has this, so admins can see all of the office listings. So I'm just going to look at mine here for a moment. So I'm going to say, I just want to see my partials. I'm going to go into my partial. I'm going to click it open. And here's where I want to go in and add those photos, add my associated documents like my seller's disclosure or lead-based paint disclosure, and then make it active and live. I just hit save and my listing is live in the MLS. So it's an amazing thing because admins don't have to wait a day to enter it in. They don't have to enter in 200 fields of information that they're trying to read off of the paper. It's a lot nicer when I can simply just go in, click the button, and click this listing upload button and send all the data over. All right, so if you have any questions on the listing side, now is a great time to throw those in, and then we're gonna start talking about Authentisign. So you've done a great job. You've gone, you've got the listing appointment, you're ready to have clients sign, or you're working with that buyer and you're ready to have them sign. The easiest way to initiate Authentisign is simply this pen over here on the left. You're going to click on that pen icon, and that is basically just kind of like the wizard was, if you will, in when we started in TransactionDesk. Same concept. Ooh, I hope I'm still connected. Hold that thought. Seemed to be frozen there. Let me try that again. All right, so I'm going to go into TransactionDesk again. Apologize, seemed to have frozen up there for a second. The left-hand side of your screen, again, is transactions here at the top. Brokers also have a broker dashboard, but then right below that is the pen icon, and that's how you're going to initiate a new signing. I tell people, think of a signing, think of it as an envelope. Think of it as an envelope and the documents you're going to put in the envelope. The hardest part of Authentisign is really remembering this one key piece. If you are sending an Authentisign, if you want it to go smooth and you don't want to have to fill in a bunch of extra stuff, here's what to remember. You're basically taking an envelope, okay, taking this envelope, you're stuffing the documents in the envelope, but you want your envelope to contain the return address to go back into your file, okay? So you have your envelope, you've already got all the forms filled out. If you've done this correctly, you've been into TransactionDesk, it's all filled out. Your contacts are all here. It knows who should be on the front of the envelope because you filled that into the forms. The question is, where do you want the documents to go back to, okay? So it's one simple step to make all of that happen. This is why my office is a mess at the end of the day. Okay. The simple step is you're going to simply click add up here at the top, and you're going to give your envelope a name. So I'm going to say offer for Tammy, and thank you, Tammy, for being my example today. The hardest part right here, where this says optional, do not think of this as optional. It is a crucial part of the transaction and the signing. In this drop down are going to be listed all of your transactions. You want to pick the transaction because that's going to allow the contact information to flow, the documents to flow, and it's going to know where to stick them all back when they sign them. So you want to make sure where it says optional, please don't think of it as optional. Think of it as, okay, what file am I marrying this to? Once you've got your signing name in and your transaction picked, or you picked your transaction, now we're going to go ahead and hit save. Do you see there's a question? How good. Thank you, Tammy. Yes, I hope you don't mind. I do appreciate you allowing me to use you for all the examples today. All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to hit save. Now we're starting our process. We're actually going in and saying, okay, what do we want to send and who's it going to? I got all the people in here, but where do I want to send it first? So the first thing is they got rid of that cumbersome wizard. So basically everything is over here on the right. So when I click add participants, well, you could add yourself, you could add a new person, you could add from contacts, but we did all that, right? We filled the contact into the form. So all we really want to do is add the transaction. Now, because we already married the transaction, it knows who the players are, right? So maybe I want to send it to Barry Buyer. Then I want to send it to Bertha. Now, at my brokerage, we witness our contracts. So, of course, I want to send it to me. Then after I sign it, I want to send it to the co-oping agent. Automatically, it's going to go in that order. Now, here's the thing. It just follows the logical order of real estate. If you are sending it to all the parties, you want to make sure you're putting it in order, because Todd Lipinski, the co-oping agent, trust me, he does not want a blank offer. So if Barry and Bertha haven't signed it yet, I don't want it going to him at the same time. So that's what the signing order is. If I wasn't going to include Tom, well, then it would be no big deal, right? Because I don't care if Barry signs it first or Bertha signs it first. I really don't care. It's going to both of them. But if you're including the co-oping agent, so it automatically goes to him at the end, well, I want to make sure everybody signed it first. So I want to set a signing order. So I'm going to send it to these 4 people. Now, what's the order I want it to go in? Well, I certainly don't want Tom to get it first. My order that I usually like is I usually like it to go to my buyers, then to me to witness. So I have one more chance to catch anything I might have missed, any initials I might have missed, and then onto the co-oping agent. So you can see I'm actually putting it in that order so that it goes from one to another to another. This is a really key step. I had the nicest lady. She took my class, and she was brand new. I think she was in her 70s, and she'd just gotten her real estate license. She took the class, and she said, Colleen, I'm writing my first offer tonight. Can I call you if I have any questions? Absolutely. And just like you're always welcome to call. We have great tech support too. You're welcome to call me directly. Sometimes if I'm teaching, I might not be able to get back to you immediately, so tech support is even better. However, she called me. I was driving, and she called me, and she was crying, and I felt so bad. I literally pulled off the road to help her, opened up my laptop, and she said, Colleen, I have sent this to the buyers 11 times. I am embarrassed. They're going to know I'm new. Can you please help me understand why the buyer is not getting it? Well, here's what she was doing. She had, in fact, sent it 12 times. I could see all 12 submissions. Unfortunately, she had her in as number 1 person, right? So she was trying to get it to them, and it was really just going to her, and she had never opened her email, so she hadn't gotten it. So you want to make sure if you are including the co-oping agent, you always have them in the right order, because if Barry never signs, it can't go on to Bertha. Again, if you're not including the co-oping agent, then it's not a big deal. It can go in any order. If you want to remove a co-oping agent, you see I can just click the arrow to the right. You can click remove, and it will pull them out. But if you are using the signing order, you do want to make sure that you've got them in the right order. Okay, pretty self-explanatory. And by the way, you just drag and drop them into that order. All right, so now what are they signing? Are you sending everything? Are you sending nothing? What are you sending? So basically, you're just clicking the add a document. Now remember, we did all the hard work in TransactionDesk, so everything is here, whether it was a form or a document. And remember, there's a difference. Forms are those fillable forms. Documents are anything you brought in outside of that. And we also have the seller's disclosure and lead-based paint. Remember, we pulled those in. So I want to bring over my seller's disclosure. I also want to have them sign the purchase agreement. Again, maybe I want them to have their buyer's agency form. I'm just going down the file to everything that I want them to sign. Let's say, though, you have a home warranty form and it's not in TransactionDesk, or you have an affiliation agreement that maybe isn't in TransactionDesk. You can also upload additional documents. It's kind of that same concept. It's that drag and drop. So let's say, I'm going to use my Helen document again here. Let's say that you have this document, it's a home warranty form. I can literally drag and drop it onto that drag and drop strip, and literally it's now pulling that document in for me. These, just like the other items, you can simply drag and drop into the order that you want them. So if you want to rearrange the order, you can. There was one thing I found a little bit tricky in the new Authentisign. So I want to show it to you because I kind of bumped my head on it a little bit. If you are looking to remove a page, or let's say, heaven forbid, the agent scanned in the offer upside down or emailed it to you upside down, if you click on the arrow over here to the right, it will show you the layout. So if I wanted to remove one particular page, you can click on these menu dots and you can rotate the document. So again, if they scanned it in upside, I can't tell you how many offers I get where like the first page is upside down. I'm like, really? You didn't bother to look at it before you sign it. Anyway, you can rotate a page or all the pages. You can delete a page or just get a better view of the page if you need to see it. So keep in mind, before there was a button that said rotate page, and I thought that was a little bit easier because I was kind of looking for it, and I kind of thought those little dots were page numbers at first. But I noticed now they did add the page number next to it, so that does help a little bit. So keep in mind, you can add those documents in. Lastly is, where are they signing? Now remember, if you did the step I showed you, most of the documents you're using are already pre-tagged. I didn't pre-tag these particular ones because I wanted to show you if there is something that is not tagged. So let's say I'm putting initials on for Barry Buyer here. I'm simply clicking Barry Buyer, grabbing the initials box, and putting the initial together for Barry Buyer. We've got Bertha Buyer here. I can also put her initials. Now, this would be kind of cumbersome, in my opinion, if you had to do this for every single page. So here's another tip for you. Where it says initial pages, my purchase agreement, the buyers have to initial on every single page. So instead of going in, Bertha, Barry, dragging all the tags, I can click on initial pages. I can say I want to use the medium size tag. At the bottom right is where they're going to initial. Now, who's going to be initialing? Well, Barry and Bertha, because they're our buyers. Is it only the purchase agreement, or is it multiple pages? By the way, maybe they only are initialing page 1 through 6. You could say, I only want initials to fall on page 1 through 6. So you can be very, very specific. Now watch what happens. When I click place initials, you can see that now Barry and Bertha, I already did the first one, so we added it in there too, but you can see that on each page, it's got Barry and it's a lot easier, by the way. I'm kind of OCD, so some people would probably just leave them there. I like to put them in the boxes. But you can see it's a heck of a lot easier to just drag them in the box than to click the name, click the box, move the box. Again, most of this should already be done for you. So when you go to these forms, it should already have initials for Barry and Bertha in the appropriate boxes. Okay, now they added some other cool stuff, so I'll show you that really quickly, and I know I'm getting low on time, so I promise I won't keep you over. But let's say, let's use the home protection plan here. So let's say you are giving Barry and Bertha the option. Do they want a home protection plan or don't they? Let's face it, if we put an optional checkbox, they would check yes and no because they have no idea really what this form is asking them. So what I do is I use the radio. Think of radio buttons as choices. So what I'm doing is I'm allowing them to say yes or no, but they cannot choose both. By the way, you can also add another radio button. So let's say you have a third option. You could go ahead and yes, no, or maybe. You could add another. I've never had a maybe before, but yes or no, and you can go ahead and move those into the appropriate place. They can only check one. You can also do drop downs. So maybe you want a drop down to contain, do you want a home warranty, yes or no? You could say the yes or no in your drop down. And you could even put a tooltip that says home warranty. So when they run their mouse over it, it says that. It actually says that right in the tooltip. So I'm going to say, we're going to call this home warranty. And I'll kind of show you this briefly. Default option. So there's what it's going to be, yes and no. They can choose which one they want. Again, you can do required or not required, just toggle it on or off. So couple different options. The most important thing to remember though is everyone does need a place to sign. So as I mentioned in my company, we actually witness our contracts. I'm going to go to the signing page. I'm going to say Barry is going to sign here. And again, this should already be done on your contracts. Bertha is going to be signing here, and it knows all this. You see how it's got the pre-printed right there? Most of the tags should already be set up for you. There is one thing that I want to explain. When I first used this, I got so frustrated. I was like, whoa, I hate this new Authentisign. I'm never using it. I did not understand how cool it was. So when I first started using this, where the initials came out, I'm just going to show you how it comes out of the box. Again, technology not meeting real life real estate. When it comes out of the box and you use the initial, it gives you all this other stuff, hour, date, pre-printed name. I didn't want all that. I'm where they initial. The only thing I want is the initial. As you can see, there's no date field. So you can actually change the default on that. What you do is you simply double click it, and this little option will come up, and it will say, okay, what do you want to be there? I don't want a name block. Don't want a date stamp. I don't want a timestamp. I just want the initial. So you can actually save that as the default. And keep in mind, you can do the same thing. My default for the signatures for the buyers does automatically come with the date, because usually where my buyers are signing, there is a date field that's going to pop up. So I like having the date listed there on those, but not the initials. So you can kind of customize it and you can save your default. You do want to make sure that you have a signing block for each party. So I'm going to be the witnessing agent here. And as you can see, I'm going to need that date field. So under my default, I have that date field automatically populate too. If you got all the way to this point, and I did this the other day, I was so focused on the details and the terms, because there were some really complicated terms, I forgot to change the price. I swear, I got all the way to this point. I'm like, oh my God, Colleen. So there's also markup tools. If you get all the way here and you need to strike something off or use the strike through, you can actually go in and you can do that right from here too. These are more agent style markups right here. So once you have everything set up for signing, all you have to do is hit next. And then you can even customize the invitations. So I can, let's say that Barry and Bertha, I need to give them instructions to bring things to the closing or something like that. You can go into each one of them and type a customized message that only that party will see. So it makes it really, really easy to go back and leave a personal message. Then last, all they have to do is hit send, and those documents are going to be sent to their email. I want to cover one last thing that can be slightly confusing. Now that we've gone through the whole thing, I want to cover that there are multiple roles that you can set up. So let me kind of cover that. So Barry is our buyer, and of course he's going to be signing the contracts. So Barry is going to be a remote signer when I'm setting him up. There's also a reviewer role. So let's say Barry's the attorney and he's not signing at all, but I want to make sure the attorney has looked at them. I can actually say, I can set him up as a reviewer, and it will force him to accept the documents or reject the documents, and I get proof as the agent that the attorney reviewed them first. I love that. I also had just a really cute girl. She had just turned 21 and she was buying her first home. Her dad was helping her, and she said, Colleen, I don't want to sign anything. She was going out of town. I don't want to sign anything. Just send it to my dad and let him sign it. I said, oh, we can't really do that because we're going to send it via e-signature. It has to know you're really you. So I said, let's make dad the reviewer. Dad gets to see it. You can see that dad reviewed it and accepted. He can even leave you notes if he wants, and then it will go over to you and you can sign it. And she's like, okay, that's great. And that's what we did. So that reviewer role is someone who it forces them to accept or reject, shows the time and date stamp that they did so. And now, as I mentioned, attorneys or dads can even leave feedback too on the document. So it really does make for a whole level of comfort, and it takes the complexity out of trying to figure that out. The last role is a CC role, and this is all located right under the signer's information. The CC is not like CC on an email, so I just want to be very clear. This is not like it just blind carbon copies them. A CC role in Authentisign is usually set up for a title company or a lender. And what it means is if all the parties that you've established for signing have signed the document, so Bertha signed it, Barry signed it, it will automatically send it to a CC, like the co-oping agent, for instance, or maybe a title company, and you can put a personalized message in, like, happens to be a divorce, let's set up separate closing rooms, or, you know, I've notified them they need a divorce decree, whatever it happens to be. You can actually set the CC. They never get it. If nobody signs it, they have no deal. The title company doesn't want to know, right? That's why the CC is there. So if everybody signs it and we now have a deal, it can automatically deliver it to the title company and they get fully executed docs. So that's what the CC role is. So again, just 3 different roles, but basically we've set up the parties, we've set up the signing. I'm going to go ahead and hit next. It's basically going to ask me, you know, would you like to set up that custom invitation? If I want to do that, I can even set up an expiration date. Now, one of the things I do want to caution you, it used to not have an expiration date, which I totally liked. And now it does automatically populate an expiration date. I just set it out to the farthest, which I think is 60 days now for the farthest. But keep in mind, it's just the idea is you don't want contracts hanging out there forever, right? We want to be able to go in. We want to be able to track the progress. So I'm going to go ahead, again, I'm going to go ahead and fill in each place that the signers are signing. Like I mentioned, really most of those signing blocks really should be set up for you. When you pull open that document, it should know where the buyers and sellers are signing, and you should be able to just hit send. Okay. The nice thing is when your clients get it, now I'm going to take off my agent hat for just a second. So taking off my agent hat, now putting on my buyer hat, because that's really what's most important, right? Is it going to be easy for a buyer to sign? Are they going to call me with 100 questions? So taking off my buyer hat and putting on my or taking off my agent hat, putting on my buyer hat, when I go into my email, it's going to look just like this for your buyer. My buyer's going to get it again from me. They're going to start the signing process by simply clicking. It's going to ask them to set up their signature and agree that it is a legal binding signature in all 50 states, which it is. They hit start, and literally it's taking them to every single place that you've set up for signature for that buyer. And then all they have to do is hit complete. Now it's going to go on to the next party. They can also print or download a copy. So as you get, and I do tell them to read it over first because it kind of does jump them around for signatures. All right, so as I mentioned, we recorded this today so that you can go back and you can view it at any time. So should you have questions, and let's face it, we don't write offers every single day. So, you know, a month from now when you're writing an offer, if you just need a refresher on this class, you can go right to our YouTube channel. It's MiRealSource Media. Show it to you real quick where you can find this class. All right, so you go to MiRealSource Media. What you can do is simply click on the playlists, and we have all of the classes. I should have this one uploaded by this evening, but if you go to the TransactionDesk and Authentisign playlist, as you can see, we have playlists on everything: lead generation, social media. A great one right now is lead gen. If you haven't taken that class, that's really good too. You click on full playlist by TransactionDesk. You'll see the class date. You can click on the class and watch it fast forward to the point that you need. It just makes it so much easier. If you hit subscribe, it will also tell you when any new classes are available and new products too. So again, it's YouTube and it's MiRealSource Media. And if you are in Paragon, we've also added cheat sheets right under MLS documents. So don't worry if you miss something or maybe you prefer cheat sheets. We have a cheat sheet file called Education, and we have cheat sheets on everything from Authentisign to TransactionDesk to Cloud CMA. You can just type in right here what you're looking for and it will pop right up. All right, if you have any last minute questions, now's a great time. I apologize, I kept you about 4 minutes over, but you also have free support. Remember, 7 days a week, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on all of our products. And we offer free one-on-ones. So if you went through this whole class and maybe you're still kind of like, I'm missing something, you can schedule a free one-on-one session with a trainer like myself. We're all listed. You can put in, if you have a favorite trainer, you can actually put their name in. And what we do is we schedule a Zoom time with you, and then we Zoom, and we can actually see your screen. We can help you with some issues, and we can even point out maybe some specialty features for you. All right, I don't see any questions. So in that case, oh, wait, one question. Oh, thank you so much, Tammy. Thank you for not only being my example, but thank you for being so kind too. So thank you so much for your time today. Happy selling and hopefully happy listing, because we need some inventory. So happy selling, everybody. Go list some properties. Have a great day.